We could have difference of opinion with colleagues regardless of whether they're on my side of the aisle, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, doesn't matter to me. I believe that if, for whatever reason, FBI, DOJ, the intel community has any reason to believe that there is a foreign government that is trying to get involved with a presidential campaign, that they should sit down with that major party presidential candidate and let them know. I'm not aware of any evidence that this counterintelligence effort was launched targeting the President of the United States. I'm sorry, the nominee for President of the United States.
Well, he was told in August 2016 personally by U.S. intelligence officials that Russians were going to attempt to infiltrate his campaign. So they did have such a conversation in August of 2016.
So up front, as the decision was being made to send at least one person to essentially to infiltrate, to surveil the campaign, that at that point in time, I don't see any. I believe that as a matter of practice, that it would be really important going forward. We can't recreate history going backwards, but it'd be really important going forward. Sit down with a major party presidential candidate and let them know as it's happening before you start sending individuals to start surveilling the campaign like what happened.
What I'm confused about, though, is just right now Politico's come out with a story. They just spoke with Representative Tom Rooney, a top Republican lawmaker, of course, on House Intel. So he's been involved in the investigation. He said to them, quote, "What is the point of saying there was a spy in the campaign when there was none?" You know what I'm saying? It's like, let's create this thing to tweet about, knowing that it's not true. Maybe it's just to create more chaos, but it doesn't really help the case. Does he have a point? I mean, the president just says, okay, I can throw a firebomb out there, Congressman, and I can say it to people who come to my rallies, and who gives a hoot if it's true, right? I mean, that's what this is looking a whole lot like.
Yeah, I think the president believes that his campaign was spied on, that he's not just saying that.
But what basis does he have to believe that, right? There's not a single fact that supported it. Every single Republican but Devin Nunes, who has been briefed, has said there's not a single fact that they have seen to support it. So it sounds like he's making it up out of thin air.
Well, no, I mean, you have at least one person who was sent to the campaign who was meeting with members of the Trump campaign, at the beginning of this counterintelligence effort, before they sat down with Donald Trump, the nominee, to let him know that they were, whether you want to call that someone was there surveilling, infiltrating, spying, informing, like there's a lot of different words that are getting thrown around, and just the fact is there was a person sent there by the government, at least one person.
But there's a really big difference, Congressman, between sending someone, and I agree with you, some of these words to the average person, distinction without a difference, but sending someone in to spy on, to help Hillary Clinton, which is what the president has specifically alleged, is extremely different than someone coming and saying, hey, guess what? We think Russians are trying to get into this campaign. Okay, why don't you just go find out what's going on there? Those are two extremely different things.
Well, as far as motive and individuals who are making the decision, that is one of the reasons why I believe it is important, before concluding that the Justice Department, the intel community did absolutely nothing wrong, it would be important first to read the documents that they were not provided when they went to that meeting. And I'm one of these people throughout this entire process. I'm in favor of more information being provided, not less. I would like to see as much of that FISA application be declassified as possible, and let the American public read it and decide for themselves. There have been documents that have been provided to the American public. There's been some transcripts of testimony that have been provided to the American public. The DOJ Inspector General's report is due out here maybe in the next few days. So, I think that information coming out to the American public is most important, so that they're not just, taking my word for it, yours, or colleagues of mine here in Congress.
The Inspector General report, of course, about Clinton emails, but I mean, we're talking specifically about the accusation made by the President of the United States that a spy was planted in his campaign by the FBI with the express purpose of helping Hillary Clinton. It is an incredible accusation, Congressman Zeldin. I mean, we all know this. You have the people who've been briefed, Ryan, Burr, McConnell, Gowdy, all Republicans, saying nothing has supported that. I mean, what I'm asking you is, at what point, if someone just keeps saying something and throwing out bombs, is it not worth running down every single thing they're saying just because he says it? It's like Congressman Rooney just said. What's the point of saying there was a spy when there was none? It's like, let's create this thing to tweet about, knowing it's not true. That is a Republican saying this about the Republican president of the United States.
Yeah, and again, I do believe that the president, when he says that his campaign was being spied on, his definition, his use of the word, and many other people who are calling it spying, that it's being consistent, it's not being misleading. And there are other people across our entire country.
I got to push back on you on that, because that's not what he's saying. He's saying planted by the FBI to help Hillary Clinton. He has been very specific about it.
As far as that second part with regards to helping Hillary Clinton, there is clear as day evidence. I mean, Peter Strzok had a role in this entire process with regards to what we're talking about now, with regards to the end of the Clinton email probe, with regards to the beginning of the Trump-Russia probe, with regards to the FISA application. This entire process, Peter Strzok played a hugely important role. Now, he hasn't even come to Congress to testify
he was involved in the Clinton email investigation.
Well, he was also involved in the Russia investigation. He also was the person who interrogated Michael Flynn. So, he had a role to play in the overlap. He was definitely involved. He was a deputy head of counterintel. So, I mean, through that role, the job function as the deputy head of counterintelligence, when the FBI is launching a counterintelligence campaign against a major party campaign.
What I'm just confused about is you're trying to make a case, and I get it. You're supporting your guy. You're supporting Trump.
Well,
but
it's more than
all
that.
the other people who've seen the intelligence in your own party are saying there's just no there. I'm wondering what it will take for you, Congressman Zeldin, to say he's full of it.
Well, first off, I think it's important to get all the documents that the people who are making conclusions have not read yet. So in order to be able to say this is what the documents say, you have to be able to read the documents first. But again, the deputy head of counterintelligence, we've seen all the evidence.
And to be clear, you have not been briefed or
anti-Trump.
seen any of them. So you're basing everything you're telling me upon what?
No one has seen those documents. The documents that they went in.
Burr, McConnell, Ryan, Gowdy have all been briefed by the FBI in a classified setting about them.
Well, and again, I would point you to part of Speaker Ryan's comments this morning where he said that there are still documents we need to review.
Yes, he was
referring to the documents that when they went to the meeting, they were not allowed to review. Now, those documents did not come back to Congress with them. I'm not aware of those documents being here in Congress. But, to the second part of what you're asking me with regards to, motive and intent and the personnel involved in the decision, we have to understand that the highest levels of the DOJ and FBI, and Peter Strzok, in the position that he's in the role that he is playing, he clearly was, it's in his text messages. I mean, he was anti-Trump. He was pro-Hillary.
He also said in his text messages there's no there.
Well, no, that's not true. That's not true. I mean, he was.
If you
I'm
look
not
at
going to
all
repeat.
of them, it is.
Well, I'm not going to repeat the expletives of F Trump that are in his text messages.
He had a personal political point of view, but he made it clear that he didn't think that there was anything untoward. But yes, he had a political point of view, as does everybody.
Right. So I think, though, but to answer your question as to when President Trump is making a conclusion with regards to the counterintelligence department of the FBI and their motives, and you do have evidence that he is aware of Peter Strzok being involved, being the number two in this process, and knowing his biases.
So he knows Peter Strzok personally, right? Personally wasn't going to vote for him, right? He could assume that. But Congressman, it's a big step from that to say the FBI is corrupt, planted a spy in my campaign to help, as the president put it in his tweet, crooked Hillary. I think we can all acknowledge there's a totally different thing. That is a whole new ball game.
But to say that he has no evidence, to say that there's no evidence,
well, there isn't as of yet, according to Gowdy, Ryan, Burr, McConnell. There is none. They have been very clear that as of yet they have seen absolutely no evidence to support it, and clearly they believe it is important to say that to the American people.
And I would encourage my colleagues, before concluding as to what these documents say, to read the documents first. By the way, I'd like to read them, and whatever is possibly releasable, I'd love for the American public to read them, and for all of us to be able to do more to form our own independent judgments rather than taking everybody else's word for it. Those documents, though, have not been read by the people who are saying this is the conclusion to be made based off of those documents. I'm just saying you have to read them first.
All right, Congressman Zeldin, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin.
All right, and next, the president heaps praise on his cabinet, except for one person. Plus, breaking news, Stormy Daniels filing a new lawsuit tonight, saying Michael Cohen, colluded with her former lawyer to benefit Trump, plus Rudy Giuliani. He went out of the country, so I guess he thought people might not actually be rolling the tape, but they were.
I don't even think there's a slight suspicion that it's true when you, excuse me, but when you look at Stormy Daniels.
New tonight, Love Fest. President Trump heaping glowing praise on member after member of his cabinet and team today during a roundtable at FEMA.
Secretary Michael Pompeo, what a job you've done, and we appreciate it. The whole country appreciates it. Secretary Ryan Zinke, great job you're doing. Secretary Ben Carson, what you're doing is great, Ben. It's really inspirational. Elaine Chao, Secretary, all you do is produce. You do it in a very quiet way and so effective and so incredible. Secretary Nielsen, what do I say about you? You are doing great. General John Kelly is here someplace. General? Good, General. Great job, John. Administrator Scott Pruitt, thank you, Scott, very much. EPA is doing really, really well. And, you know, somebody has to say that about you a little bit. A friend of mine for a long time, Administrator Linda McMahon, one of the real stars.
It just didn't stop. I mean, everybody was gushed over, except one person.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions, thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much.
All right. I'm sorry. Out front now. Since when do the words thank you just say so much? Okay, White House correspondent for American Urban Radio Network's April Ryan, former special assistant to President George W. Bush, Scott Jennings, and former counselor to President Bill Clinton, Paul Begala. Scott, let me start with you. Ben Carson is inspirational. Elaine Chao is incredible. The Homeland Security Secretary, Kirstjen Nielsen, whom Trump has berated to the point she reportedly threatened to quit. She's great. Jeff Sessions, thank you. That's all we got.
Yeah, Nielsen and Pruitt, I thought those were the two most interesting things today, given the history that he's had with her and what's been in the news about Scott Pruitt. But on Jeff Sessions, look, clearly the president is mad about the Russia investigation. He's been mad about it since he took office, and yeah. Jeff Sessions is the person he most closely associates with that building. He's made no secret of his displeasure with Sessions' job. The thing is, Jeff Sessions is doing a good job for the president. He just puts his head down and he goes to work every day. I think Attorney General Sessions has a thick hide after being in politics for a long time, and I think he sleeps easy at night because A, he believes he did the right thing on the recusal,
sure does, yeah.
And B, and maybe Donald Trump doesn't know it yet, but when Jeff Sessions recused, he gave the president a gift, which is this: when this investigation is over, if they find there was no collusion, and Jeff Sessions was not part of the investigation because he recused himself, he's taking a key argument off the board. Can you imagine if Sessions was still running this thing and they found no collusion? The Democrats would be all over the president. Absolutely.
So, Paul, look, to Scott's point, we know Trump despises Jeff Sessions when it comes to Russia. I mean, look, there was a tweet just yesterday. Trump said the Russian witch hunt hoax continues. All because Jeff Sessions didn't tell me he was going to recuse himself. I would have quickly picked someone else. So much time and money wasted, so many lives ruined. And Sessions knew better than most that there was no collusion. So I guess if you look at that measure, Paul, the president held back today by thanking Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, he kind of wimped out when it was mano a mano there, actually.
Yeah, you know, easy to whatever all over somebody on a tweet, but when you're looking him in the eye, I guess you go to thank you.
I guess so. I think it's a very good point. I think we find ourselves in a remarkable historic moment, though, where the president of the United States has a warmer relationship with Vladimir Putin than he does with his own attorney general. He says lately, last few weeks, nicer things about Kim Jong-un than he does about Jeff Sessions. I mean, that's a really remarkable situation that we find ourselves in.
April, you know, here's the thing, though. You know, the president, obviously you have the juxtaposition of the Jeff Sessions comment with everybody else. But what he was saying to everybody else is so Trumpian, heaping praise on people indiscriminately and often disingenuously. It's easy for him to do. It's a crutch. Here he is doing it on episodes of Celebrity Apprentice.
So, Governor, you have a hell of a lot of guts, I have to tell you that. I have friends where things have happened to them. They crawl into a corner, they die. You're out there punching, so I respect that.
I appreciate that.
Hi, Kim.
How are you?
You look great. I love your fragrance. I think it's really special. I'm going to get some.
Thank you. And Chloe says hi.
And Chloe is terrific. She really is. She did great on the show, and she's a terrific person, just like you are. Cindy, I love your hairdo.
Thank you.
You're a big believer in hair like I am, right?
Yes.
Very good.
That was the disingenuous. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, April. Trump only said 11 words about Jeff Sessions, 5 of which were Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Jeff. So what's the game at this point? Because Jeff Sessions obviously has refused to resign.
Well, there is no game. This president is sincere and strategic. He heaped all the praise on everyone around that table, to include the embattled and investigated Pruitt. He told the transportation secretary she produces quietly. I mean, he praised on Ben Carson. But when it came to Jeff Sessions, that was a jab. That polite thank you was a jab, because he didn't get anything else. But what I will say, Jeff Sessions is that fly in the ointment for this president for various reasons. One, U.S. senators, Republican senators, are very angry with this president about messing with Jeff Sessions. Two, if the president does decide to fire Jeff Sessions, it's obstruction of justice. And three, this is the interesting piece to me. Since the president doesn't like Jeff Sessions so much and really doesn't want to hear what he has to say, Jeff Sessions is allegedly the holdup to bringing a sentencing reform to the White House. They're only doing prison reform, not linking it with sentencing reform, because Jeff Sessions does not want to do it. And that's interesting right there. So Jeff Sessions wields a lot of power, and the president, to a certain extent, has to eat it, even though he's jabbing him with just a thank you and making those little tweets.
I just love the irony. You know, the first sitting senator to come out and endorse him and all this, and now Jeff Sessions basically, you know, it's the guy just every single day, Trump, the thorn in his side. All right, I want to ask before you go, Paul, Bill Clinton, the fallout to his remarks about, in his defiance about not apologizing personally to Monica Lewinsky. Here he is in the initial interview when he discussed it, and then ever since trying to fix it.
Did you ever apologize to her?
No, yes.
You've apologized to her?
I apologize to everybody in the world.
But you didn't apologize to her?
I have not talked to her. The truth is, the hubbub was I got hot under the collar because of the way the questions were asked. I was mad at me.
Well, you said in the interview that you did apologize.
Here's what I want to say. It wasn't my finest hour.
What wasn't his finest hour, Paul? The way he's handled himself to Craig Melvin, or the fact that he still has not tried to personally apologize to Monica Lewinsky and is defiant about that?
That he mishandled that interview so badly.
Okay.
He's publicly apologized to Ms. Lewinsky and her family, as he should, and he did again this week.
Paul, that's not the same thing.
No, it's not, but I have to say, I've never had an affair, but if I do, I don't think my wife's going to want me to call somebody I used to have a relationship with. He did this, so much of the damage to this young woman was done in public, and the apology was in public, and I think that's the appropriate venue. And if you go back, and viewers ought to take a look at their Google machine. Google the speech he gave. I was there, September 11th, 1998. The New York Times described it as one of the most remarkable speeches in presidential history. He publicly and tearfully apologized to Monica Lewinsky and to her family, rightly so, and to his own family and to the rest of the country. That's what a person does when he takes personal responsibility for his flaws and his mistakes. A far cry from the current president, who won't apologize for anything. And I think that's a pretty important lesson there.
All right. Thank you all. And next, porn star Stormy Daniels filing a new lawsuit tonight. This time, and this would be hugely significant if it's true, saying her former lawyer was colluding with Trump's lawyer. Do newly revealed text messages make her case or not? Plus, Trump's testy call with America's closest ally, slamming Canada and talking about how Canada burned down the White House. Did Trump get his history right? Breaking news, Stormy Daniels suing her former lawyer, Keith Davidson, and President Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen. Now, Daniels is claiming that Davidson, who is the one who negotiated her non-disclosure agreement and the hush payment, colluded with Cohen. Not to benefit Daniels, who is, of course, his own client, but no, to benefit Donald Trump. The lawsuit comes out and reveals text messages between the two lawyers from earlier this year. In the text messages, they're trying to get Daniels to appear on Fox News and disavow the In Touch magazine interview that Daniels had given about her alleged affair with the president. Cohen allegedly texting Davidson, Keith, the wise men all believe the story is dying and don't think it's smart for her to do any interviews. Let her do her thing, but no interviews at all with anyone. It's like, why are they talking about this if they represent clients who are against each other? Less than a moment later, Davidson replies to that text, 100%. Cohen texts back, thanks, pal. But the ties between Cohen and Davidson don't stop there. Sarah Seidner is out front.
The ties that bind these two men could spell trouble not only for President Trump's personal attorney, Michael Cohen, but the president himself. CNN has learned some of the cases that the FBI is investigating involve not just Cohen, but also Los Angeles-based attorney Keith Davidson, according to sources with knowledge of the investigation.
I get involved when a situation or a relationship has gone bad.
Now, everyone knows about the two big cases, Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, two women who say they had sex with Donald Trump, both initially represented by Keith Davidson.
Both of those deals were silenced. It just seems like an awfully strange coincidence that they both landed in your lap, don't you think?
No, not at all.
Why not?
No, I mean, I have a very active practice. When there are few attorneys that would go against large corporations, powerful celebrities, and that's one thing that I'm known for.
But there are three other cases involving both attorneys, like big-time Republican fundraiser and vice chair of the Trump Victory Fund, Elliot Broidy. In 2017, Davidson represented a former Playboy model who says Broidy got her pregnant during their affair. Cohen represented Broidy, and Cohen and Davidson negotiated a deal to pay her $1.6 million and to keep quiet about the deal. Here's another strange case to Davidson involving a GoFundMe account set up for a homeless woman who was trying to protect Donald Trump's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Someone ran off with the money collected for her, and Davidson represented the Trump supporter who set up the account. All these cases hint at a coziness between Donald Trump's attorney and Keith Davidson. And that's exactly what Karen McDougal alleged in a suit against AMI, the National Enquirer's parent company. She believed AMI conspired to kill her story with the help of Davidson and Cohen. McDougal later settled her case with AMI, and she never sued Keith Davidson. Davidson admits he called Cohen after brokering the deal with AMI, even though Cohen was not an official party to the case.
It just seems odd that you would pick up the phone to call Michael Cohen and say,
no,
hey.
I understand. I understand, the questions, and I understand, why you may think that or other people may think that, but that's just simply not the case.
Now, Keith Davidson points out that the three women who you heard about in the story, Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, and the mistress of Elliot Broidy, the Republican donor, all came to him through three different people. None of them were Michael Cohen. He says that Michael Avenatti's lawsuit against him is frivolous. He says he also believes he can now finally tell the whole truth about what happened with Stormy Daniels because he believes that his attorney-client privilege has been waived. And lastly, the reason why they were communicating, there was a non-disclosure agreement that they had all signed and agreed to.
All right.
Aaron?
Thank you very much, Sarah Seidner, which, obviously the only time we've really had a chance to see Keith Davidson, hear him and hear his answers to these questions. Out front now, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Harry Sandek, where, of course, Cohen is under criminal, right now, criminal case, and former federal prosecutor Ann Milgram. So, and Stormy Daniels says Keith Davidson and Michael Cohen colluded basically to manipulate her and to help Trump, which obviously would be completely wrong, considering he was supposed to be representing her. You see all these strange, whatever word you'd like to use, coincidences, overlaps. What's your take?
So I think there's a couple things to think about here. First of all, lawyers always have fiduciary duties to their clients, meaning that there's trust and confidence, and lawyers have an obligation to act on behalf of that client. There are definitely some things happening here that feel unusual. I mean, Sarah described it as cozy, and I would say unusually close. There's a lot of back and forth in conversations. What's not clear in this litigation, and the lawsuit is looks to me as a way to keep this story in the news, and sort of they are trying their case in the media in some ways. What's not clear to me is that there are any damages here, even if there is a breach, that there are damages, or that there's really a basis for this kind of litigation. What harm happened to her in this? It's just, it's also not clear to me that they've actually proven
even
that.
If they're right, what would be the harm? What does it mean, though, obviously, for the president, if this is true?
Well, I think if it's true, the next question that always comes up whenever there's anything Cohen-related is, what did the president know about it? Did he direct any of these steps to occur? And if so, would he have some complicity in whatever breach of fiduciary duty or breach of loyalty that Davidson's under investigation, well, now been sued for?
So let's just do some more of the text messages here, Ann, between Cohen and Davidson. So again, they're still talking about this interview where Daniels is going to go on Fox News, or whether she will, right, to disavow the In Touch interview where she had gone into all the explicit detail about her rendezvous with the president that she said happened. So this is from this year in January. Cohen says, "Can you call me, please?" Cohen texts again 15 minutes later, "Please call me." Half hour later, Cohen texts again, "Anything?" And then Davidson responds, "Still trying." Less than a moment later, Cohen writes, "This is no good. We need her, as by doing tomorrow, you just create another news cycle instead of putting an end to this one." So they're certainly on the same page about the strategy here.
There's no question. I think what it appears to be is that they have some sort of side agreement. And what's interesting, and again, I don't think we know for sure yet what that side agreement was, but what's interesting is all the stuff Sarah just went through, the Elliot Broidy case, they're both making a lot of money out of these types of deals. And so I think the real question and the problem with things like this is it absolutely leads to this question of, was Davidson representing Stormy Daniels and what was in her best interest, or was he actually working with Michael Cohen to get to what was best for the president?
And so to your point, say there's a side deal, say it's totally unethical, say it's illegal, whatever it might be. Again, Harry, it does come back to, did the president know about it? Or how does this in any way change what he says, right, which is that he wasn't aware during the election, right, of this payment?
Right. And the same question that always arises, you know, is it plausible that he wouldn't be aware of some of these things? One of the tweets, Michael Cohen says, "I'm with the First Lady," while he's talking to Davidson about these other issues. So, you know, what actually was going on, it's not entirely clear that it was for her benefit. At the same time, there was an agreement between her and Cohen, and at some point, obviously, the plan changed, and she hired a new lawyer and went in a different direction. So Davidson's liability, I think, depends on when that plan changed.
Exactly, when Michael Avenatti got involved. And Ann, before we go here, though, you've got Davidson now reportedly cooperating with the feds in the criminal case against Cohen. Yes. So if there was some side deal, whatever, you now have him cooperating against Cohen.
Right, and that's particularly interesting because he brought the Elliot Broidy case to Cohen, and that really makes no sense, right? It makes sense if he represents a woman who's alleging that Donald Trump did something, he knows Cohen represents Trump. Why would you bring something to Michael Cohen that doesn't involve directly Donald Trump, right? So he brings Cohen into the Broidy case to be Broidy's lawyer. Cohen personally benefits, raises questions.
It raises serious questions, of course, because at this point, the Elliot Broidy case has appeared to only involve Elliot Broidy. Obviously, bringing Donald Trump into that would be a very big change in the storyline. Thank you both so very much. And next, Trump wrongly accusing Canada of burning down the White House in 1812. We'll talk about a factual issue that the White House has to struggle to explain tonight. Plus, Rudy Giuliani talking Stormy Daniels. But what is Rudy suggesting?
Beautiful women, classy women, women of great substance. Stormy Daniels?
Tonight, the White House trying to explain the president's tense call with the Canadian Prime Minister. This is a phone call that included Trump making an erroneous reference to the War of 1812. He did this to justify why he is slapping tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. Obviously, Canada has been called a national security threat by this. Jim Acosta is out front with this exclusive reporting. I mean, Jim, it's pretty incredible what happened here when you think about it, but what exactly did go down in this testy call with Trudeau?
Well, Aaron, as you know, they've been going back and forth for several weeks now over the president's decision to slap tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel, and they were having this phone conversation on May 25th. It is kind of incredible to wrap your mind around. And during this conversation, Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, pressed the president and said, how can you justify these tariffs for national security reasons, as the president and the administration laid out? And at that point, Justin Trudeau, as he was pressing the president, was told by the president, well, didn't you guys burn down the White House, referring to the War of 1812? Of course, there is a problem with all of that, historical problem with all of that. The Canadians did not burn down the White House during the War of 1812. That was the British, but it does go to this very tense relationship that has suddenly developed between two very close allies, and Justin Trudeau saying in recent days that it's offensive to him, insulting that the U.S. would claim national security reasons for these tariffs.
Well, and of course, in all of that, you know, to make some sort of a joke, not a joke, You know.
Exactly.
Look, the big question, of course, when you talk about this whole imbroglio about the War of 1812, Jim, is why does Canada pose a national security risk? I mean, it's an absurd thing on the face of it, right? And they are using it as their justification. Have they been able to give any legitimate reason for that excuse for tariffs?
You know, I do think it's a stretch. They are trying to give a justification. I talked to a senior administration official today who did not try to repeat the president's justification that the Canadians burned down the White House during the War of 1812, because that obviously is not true. But this senior administration official said, listen, the steel and aluminum industry is so depressed in the United States that in the event of a World War II-like world war across the country, that these industries would not be able to produce the tanks and the ships and the jets and so on to fight that kind of a battle. Obviously, you know, one would think if a war like that did break out, the U.S. would rise to the occasion. It's hard to think that that would not be the case. But going back to your comment there about how the Canadians are not laughing, we did talk to a source familiar with this conversation who said they're not laughing about this. The Canadians are not laughing about this, and they think if a trade war breaks out, American workers won't be laughing either. Aaron.
You would think. And I mean, you know, look, putting aside the fact that there is some humor in it, the absurdity of it, I mean, why even bring it up if you don't know who burned it, anything about the War of 1812 as a sitting president of the United States? Thank you very much, Jim Acosta.
One for the history books.
Yeah, one for the history books, and yeah, you know, maybe just an alternative fact. Maybe and now to Rudy Giuliani. So, Rudy's in Israel, and he has been weighing in on everything from Trump's marriage to Stormy Daniels, how she looks, to whether she's actually a porn star or not, to whether he watches porn, to Kim Jong-un. Here's what Giuliani said about how Melania Trump feels about Stormy Daniels.
She believes in her husband. She knows it's untrue. I don't even think there's a slight suspicion that it's true when you, excuse me, but when you look at Stormy Daniels. I know Donald Trump, and look at his three wives, right? Beautiful women, classy women, women of great substance. Stormy Daniels.
Okay. Political analyst Kirsten Powers joins me now, and Rob Astorino, former Republican candidate for New York governor, also friends with Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani. Kirsten, let me start with you. I have to say I am rendered a bit speechless, and this is just one of many things he said today. Rudy Giuliani is right now the spokesperson for the White House in a lot of ways, and certainly in the Russia probe, right? So what do you say? You know, Trump has been married 3 times to classy women of substance, and then Stormy Daniels?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of astonishing, and even the way he's speaking about her, you know, supposedly a porn star and denigrating her, and the implication is clearly that who can take this woman seriously because of what she does for a living. I think that's pretty clearly what he was saying, and I guess he was making casting some aspersions on the way she looks. Looks like a beautiful woman to me, but what do I know? Look, it doesn't matter what you do for a living. That is not that in no way says anything about your integrity. There are plenty of people who have, you know, I guess jobs that he considers respectable, who have no integrity, and people who have jobs like hers who have immense integrity. And so I think that she's a businesswoman. This is what she's chosen to do with her life, and she deserves to be treated respectfully.
Well, and there's also just, I mean, Rob, the pure issue here of whatever he may think about her. He has an issue with someone who sells their body, but not with the people who pay them hush money to be quiet. I mean, let me just play something else he continued to say about Stormy Daniels.
The business you were in entitles you to no degree of giving your credibility any weight. She has no reputation. If you're going to sell your body for money, you just don't have a reputation.
Well, she has a reputation, and, you know, look, how many moms and dads out there are praying each night that their daughter grows up to be a porn star? It's not what I want for my daughters. I'm not casting any aspersion on her, but I'm just saying.
But you are.
Well, she chose to do that, and she chose to do that her whole life. Do you? I'm not going to, it's a rhetorical question, but I don't think you or most people want their daughter to grow up to be a porn star.
I mean, I could tell you, what do I think about men who decide to have one-night stands with porn stars when their wife is home with a 7-month-old baby?
Allegedly.
But I mean, but that side of it's fine. That's the guy who pays $130,000.
I'm not saying either side is right. If it happened, everyone's saying it has happened. We don't know if it has happened. We do know that she has made a living doing this. She had an agreement, which she's trying to get out of. She got paid, which maybe she wants more. Who knows? But I mean, I think, you know, what Rudy was saying is, can we boil this down? This happened in 2006. Has nothing to do with him being president of the United States.
I would disagree, but Kirsten, I'll let you make the point. I mean, Rudy is boiling this down to she's ugly, she isn't classy, she isn't a woman of substance, and she's a prostitute. Okay?
Yeah, I mean,
let's just boil it down. That's what
Totally.
Rudy's saying. So you can't listen to anything she said.
Right. I mean, it's just misogynist, period, end of story. But, you know, look, anyone who's lived in New York City knows that Rudy Giuliani cheated on his wife, announced he was divorcing her, you know, in a press conference. I mean, he's in no position to be lecturing people about integrity. There's nothing that Stormy Daniels has done that could even come close to that, in my book, honestly. Would I want my daughter to grow up and act like Rudy Giuliani did? No, I would not. Would I want my son to grow up and act that way? No, I would not. So he should just back off and just, you know, stick to the facts.
Rob, before we go, Rudy Giuliani, this happened in Israel. There were a lot of other things. You know, he talked about Kim Jong-un getting on his hands and knees and begging for it. I mean, this was just one of many things that he said. We have video of him dancing what looks to be a restaurant.
Well, decently is not turning them into Joan of Arc.
Thank you both. And next, breaking news, the husband of Kate Spade revealing new...
We can have difference of opinion with colleagues regardless of whether they're on my side of the aisle, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, doesn't matter to me. I believe that if, for whatever reason,